Hey there, my name is Jason Gold, and I'm back with another episode of Investor Insights. In today's episode, we're talking about the importance of storytelling when crafting your IR message. So let's get started. There's a reason why I get a lot of great feedback from these videos. And the main reason is not because I'm so good looking. It's also not because I'm so funny or charming or endearing. The reason I get all this great feedback from CFOs and IR people and CEOs is because I tell stories. I make these videos engaging, and I go back in history and tell people why things that have happened. I weave in interesting storylines to capture people's attention. That's what you need to do when telling your story. It's not because I'm hysterically funny. It's because I tell stories. And when I tell stories, the audience is engaged. See, I could do the opposite. I could publish lists. I could go on and on with examples. I could talk in a monotonous tone of voice. I could tell you about all the things that I've done. And that would be super boring. And while my content would still be super valuable and informative, no one would listen. There wouldn't be thousands of people watching these videos or commenting or spending time on them. They would just scroll and scroll because they have other more interesting and important things to do. Lists and reporting are boring. Storytelling is interesting and it captures people's attention. So why am I telling you this? Well, that's because 90% or more of the companies that I look at and of the prospects that I talk to are so boring. And they come to me and they say, how do we get more people interested in our story? How do we get the multiple that we really want? How do we get the multiple that we deserve and get people to really pay attention? And I say, stop being boring and start telling a story. See, when you're really boring, the only thing investors have to look at are your numbers. And what happens if the numbers take a step back? See, very infrequently does a company go like this the whole way. There are progress steps along the way, and sometimes there are missteps or misexecution. The path from A to Z is rarely linear, especially for a company. There are quarters where you take a step back. There are quarters where you need to keep people engaged. And if the only thing they have to go on because you're so boring is the numbers, then when your numbers aren't great, they bail. Conversely, if you have a great story and you've convinced people of where you're going, when you have an execution misstep, and of course, if you explain why, then people will still believe in your story, of course, within reason. They will believe in your story and they'll buy more. They will stick with you. See, the importance of telling a story isn't just for fun and to get people engaged. It's to keep investors engaged in your story. When the numbers are going the wrong way, investors either have to remind themselves why they're there and decide to double down, or if they're analysts reporting to a portfolio manager, they have to tell a story to their portfolio manager who's screaming at them the next day that the stock is down 30%. Why do we own this? And if you don't have a story, they're going to bail. If you have a story that has engaged people, that is easy to tell and retell, then those people will be buyers on a -30 morning, and that's the day that you finish -10. That's what people get really excited about, that the story value keeps people engaged in the name. Here's the other thing about having a story that's only about the numbers. What if your inflection in the story that you really are telling yourself is several quarters away? The reality is the street should be getting involved now, and you're upset that no one's given you credit, except you have no story and your numbers aren't yet inflecting. Sure, when the numbers do inflect, the street will come running to you, but you want to get people engaged ahead of that. And so telling a story now is critically important. And you know what? It's really that simple. Let's tell a story about it. Imagine you were at a backyard barbecue and someone said, "Hey, what do you do?" You probably wouldn't say, "Well, I respond to emails all day and I write emails and I go to meetings and sometimes I build spreadsheets and sometimes I make PowerPoint presentations and sometimes I manage people and I've got a lot of people that work for me and sometimes I'm doing HR." You would not do that. People would think you're super boring. and weird. And they'd walk away and they wouldn't want to talk to you anymore. You would just be reporting on what you do. So then the question really is, why do so many companies do exactly that on quarterly calls? They give a recitation of all the stuff that happened in the quarter with no inflection, with no intonation, with no passion about what's going on, and with no storytelling. What you would do at a barbecue to get people to actually pay attention is when someone says, hey, what do? You'd say, well, I'm actually the CFO of this really cool company. See, I started off in accounting and I worked my way up, and then I was in FP&A, and then all of a sudden they made me CFO of this company. It's really cool. Here's what we do, and here's where we're going, and here's why I'm really interested. I love my job. And the person would actually think, oh, this guy's pretty interesting. Now I understand. And they'd engage you in conversation. You should do that when you talk to investors also. Get out of the business of just reporting what happened and get in the business of telling them a story. You might have a lot of great things going on at your company, but if you're boring and just reporting, no one's going to care. If you want them to give you credit or to get interested in what you have going on, tell them a story. No one's going to spend the time or care if all you do is report. See, investors have a lot of other things going on, and they're chasing down other interesting stories. They're building spreadsheets. They're talking to their own investors. They're doing a million different things. Part of your job is to capture them and engage them and captivate them with something that will allow them or make them want to spend more time on you. So whatever you want to communicate, remember that you're fighting for investors' time. The one way to grab it is by telling them a story. In nearly all of my clients, one of the first things that I do is I sit down and I go through all of their stuff. I meet with everybody on the team and I try to figure out what's really driving this business today and what's going to be driving this business tomorrow and in the future. And then we figure out how to distill that down into a story that they can tell people so that people will really understand what's driving the profitability of this business. And any good story should have three key components to it. Let's go through them one by one. Number one, why is the company so special? Number two, why is now an important time to be paying attention? And number three, what the future holds for the company. It's really that simple. If you take all of the facts of what's going on at the company and you figure out how to distill it into a way that you can be the person at the barbecue that's actually cool, that people want to talk to and listen to, rather than the weirdo in the corner that just recites off a bunch of different things, that's all you need to capture people's attention. You'll be moving in the right direction of getting investors to care. That's it. Now you've got a simple framework here for how to tell your story to investors in a way that they will listen. Consider bouncing the story off other disinterested parties too. You can bring in someone from the outside, like an investor relations consultant, or you can work with somebody that's not in the day-to-day managing of the story to investors to say, hey, does this resonate with you? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Investor Insights. I look forward to seeing you here again next time.